I am happy to introduce our presenter today, Susan Heilman. Susan joined NWIRC in 2006, and during her tenure as a strategic business advisor, she's directly assisted manufacturers in our region to achieve business growth and cost reduction strategies. Susan is a certified speaker, trainer, coach as part of the John Maxwell team and trained in Maxwell DISC behavior assessments. She's received her innovation engineering green belt and training for succession planning and family business advisor services as part of the Galliard Family Business Advisor Institute. Susan has degrees in business management and speech communications from Clarion University, and she's a master's degree candidate in organizational leadership and a veteran of the United States Air Force. So Susan, I will go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Molly. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I am going to go ahead and turn my screen into the presentation so that we can go ahead and get started. I thank you all for taking the time to participate and learn more about the COVID recovery program. Okay. Is there anyone that can't see the screen that I have up right now?
It looks good to me.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so the COVID recovery program was really developed, honestly, back in March, before there was really, or right after there was an announcement about the pandemic itself. There were a group of us that were talking about how difficult this was going to be on business. And what started as a conversation really developed into the COVID recovery program. It was about how are we going to be able to help businesses get back to business once the nation, and at that point in time, of course, who knew how long it was going to go on. But it was designed initially to provide our partners with information on, if you're talking to a business, where would you refer them? At what level would you refer them? Because what we often hear from companies is there's so many agencies out there. We have a difficult time knowing where to go. And so our common answer to that is always, don't worry about who to contact because we all know each other. And if you need help, I'm sure that any of our agencies will be glad to make sure that you're put in touch with the right person. But initially, the program was designed to help our partners realize throughout the region who's doing what service. And then as we were in the process of developing that, we had some funding, CARES funding, come down into the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which we are one of the centers in the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. I'll get into that in a little bit later. But CARES funding came down and we said, you know what, why don't we take this program and actually go into more depth and really see if we can't help companies through this, not just provide information, but really provide some one-on-one help. So the three questions the program answers is, what does a business need to reopen or begin to rebuild? And that most of our manufacturers, it's interesting, we have found if they were closed, they weren't closed for a long time. Most of them have stayed opened, but those who were experiencing issues really before COVID are now the ones that really need to look at where are they going to rebuild. Where does the business regain strength and stabilize? Some businesses are more stable than others. And how can the business grow and sustain? And the four partners that came together for the COVID recovery program are a Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industries Rapid Response Program. For those of you who are not aware, and we will touch on each of the services, products and services that are offered by our agencies, with the exception of Department of Labor and Industry. Although I know we have folks on the webinar today from the CareerLink system. So the Department of Labor and Industry is actually a very large umbrella that has a lot of different programs, one of which is the workforce development boards. And so the CareerLink system really falls under the oversight of the workforce development areas and the workforce development boards. But Rapid Response is another one of those programs. Rapid Response really helps companies when they're looking at closures, typically, or large layoffs. Then they would go in and help the company. And that's sort of Bev Rapp, who is our region's point of contact for that program, was the initial person that we sat down and talked to about how do you think this is going to affect our employees, our businesses, you know, the programs and services that are offered. The other partners in the program, Steel Valley Authority, which is under the Strategic Early Warning Network, or SOAN. Steel Valley Authority, again, we'll talk about a little bit later. The Small Business Development Centers, we actually have 2 in our region. We have one located in the north out of Gannon University, and then one on the eastern part of our region in Clarion University. And Cindy Nellis, who was on the line, is going to talk to us later about that. And then, of course, the Northwest IRC. So because the funding came down through our organization, we sort of took the lead on this. We're the ones that are doing all the tracking and data input and making sure the referrals are sent out. So again, when we started this, it was really looking at what level does a company come in. So under all 3 of those questions, what does the business need to reopen and rebuild? It was, where are the services being provided, or where could they be provided, and what would those services be? So under number 1 would be Department of Labor and Industry Rapid Response Program. And that would be for all businesses, manufacturers and non-manufacturers. The second is, where does the business regain strength and stabilize? And those are the areas and services that can be provided sort of within that area of opportunity. And the Strategic Early Warning Network, Steel Valley Authority, and the Small Business Development Centers are really the 2 organizations that help companies that are looking at layoff aversions or looking at services to build or rebuild. For the purposes of the COVID recovery program, the SBDC typically does work with manufacturers. We came together and asked them if they would considering, for the purposes of this program, to work with non-manufacturers, and they did agree to that. So the third area is, how can the business grow and sustain? And it's really looking at your processes and your markets, assistance with sales and workforce development. And there's some overlap in many of those programs, but as I said, those of us that are kind of in the workforce and economic development system know where the differentiation is. And we are here really just to help your business move forward. So in addition to the 4 core partners of Rapid Response, Steel Valley Authority, the SBDCs, and the NWIRC, there's a lot of other programs and services in our region. And that's one of the reasons that we felt that this program was really important, because sometimes there's so many programs out there that are of good value and that sincerely want to help companies and provide them with good services, but they're not really sure where to turn to. So again, our partnership with these other organizations, such as Ben Franklin Technology Partners and the Career Links and the Governor's Action Team, are all part of this program. So as we meet with companies and we learn more about what their circumstances are, we can tap into any of those partnering agencies as well. Lot of words on this particular slide, but essentially it is just those same 3 questions of where do we start? So Rapid Response, if you look to the far left, Rapid Response is the partner. The company themselves would be temporarily closed or pending permanent closure, and it's sort of a description of what that company status would be. And then the response that might be shared with the company is listed next, sort of in the middle of the page. Funding eligibility is listed next. And then where do we go from there? You know, what are the next steps, or what are the questions that a company might have? So at our beginning level with rapid response, this is where it stands. When you start bringing in, well, they're not temporarily closed and they're not pending a permanent closure, but they're not financially stable, you know, who would visit them then? And again, starting at the left-hand columns, rapid response or Steel Valley, perhaps both of those together, working with the company that is not financially stable, might be pending layoffs or might have some layoffs, looking at additional layoffs. They might just need to establish some best practices or have other programs or services that they can be assisted with. They're funding eligible. And again, that's an area that keeps changing as we've gone along. You know, the CARES Act funding isn't really specifically listed here, and there has been CARES Act funding, for example, that has come down to every county in our region. So if you have not talked specifically to your county economic development partners, again, that's another area of resource available to companies. But it's where do we work with a company that's in that state? Then if you go the next level where the company is stable but still in danger of layoffs, they might be struggling, their cash flow might be, you know, a lot of what I heard when I was out talking to companies is, we're good until we get through PPP. Once we get through PPP, we're not really sure, you know, how that's going to affect our company. Other times, I know in particular when the unemployment compensation, when folks were laid off and collecting unemployment, there was a number of organizations that said, you know, we'd like to call people back, but we've tried a couple of times and they're not really receptive to that because they're making more with the additional unemployment compensation, that additional funding, than they were when they were working. And so we're having workforce issues there. So all of those things kind of combined sort of is the area that Steel Valley Authority or the small business development centers can work with companies on, whether that's cash flow, whether that's workforce, shared work resources. If your company is trade affected, there's other programs out there. And then the very next level is if the company is questionably or mostly stable. You know, they might be struggling a little bit, but they really have a lot of great practices in place. Maybe they don't know what markets they can expand into or what customers to reach out to. So perhaps either Steel Valley or the IRC or the SBDC might be the right partner. It really depends on the situation with the company. You know, how large are they? What industry are they in, etc. But we can provide market research or workforce training or process efficiencies. Again, working with the C-level or appropriate staff. And then finally, we're looking at companies, believe it or not, that remain stable and were growing. I learned of a company that actually had been providing some kind of paper products. And when COVID hit, while they were deemed non-essential, they pivoted their business and began taking the paper product that they were developing and rolling it tightly and making for the end of swabs, nasal swabs for COVID testing. And so a lot of companies actually, while it wasn't detrimental, the pandemic has not been detrimental to their business, it actually has affected them in a positive way because they were able to pivot with their current practices or with the industry they were in and continue to grow and expand their business. So for those companies, it's like, how do we handle that? You know, so there is, again, workforce training or new product development, strategic planning. How do we incorporate that into what we do on an everyday basis? So as I said when we started, it really depends on what level that company is first approached and where they are assessed. So the process itself is this. We do a business assessment. There is a cash flow analysis. This could be either a high level, which is conducted by the NWIRC, or a very in-depth, which is conducted by Steel Valley Authority. The small business development centers actually do both levels for companies that they work with. For manufacturers in particular, I know depending on your cash flow situation, we usually start there. Where is your cash flow? Is it excellent? Is it good? Is it fair, poor, or critical? And that's usually our first indication on which level you might be able to be evaluated on. Then the third piece is we look at a tactical action plan. We talk to your management team about the critical issues of the business, what each of those members believe are your company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats. We look at your market analysis or your competitive analysis. That's sort of done on the background. We talk to you about what does your ideal customer look like? You know, what geographical area are they in? How big are they? What kind of industry subsector are they in? And then we talk to each of your management team members about what are your ideas for how you feel the business would best be served going forward. And then finally, we would make recommendations to the group itself based on all that list of partners and services in the beginning. All right, so who can best serve you? And we recognize that many companies actually have opportunity to utilize a lot of those programs, but let's face it, we all have a limited amount of resources, whether it be time or money or people. And so while there might be 10 problems that can be addressed in the company with programs, rather than trying to do all 10, let's just really focus on the 1 or 2. Let's start with those that are going to give your company the biggest impact in getting back on your feet and getting back into business and growing. And then we can look at those additional programs and services that are out there. It's important to note that the COVID recovery program is a no-cost service to all companies, whether that be a manufacturing company or a non-manufacturing company. And for right now, with the exception of a few companies in North Central region, most of the services through the COVID recovery program have been done virtually, just like this. You know, we sit down, we send a paper copy out, you sit and you go through the questions as we go through them. We're doing a face-to-face on Zoom or on GoToMeeting, and we're just answering those questions as we go along. Cindy said earlier before we started that, you know, we're not fatigued, like we don't have Zoom fatigue yet, but we do miss the interaction, one-on-one interaction with our companies, but many are still not open to vendors, and we totally understand that. In fact, one of the areas we're seeing more and more is that companies are telling us COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we're selling more than anything else. You know, it's not only changed perhaps the way that we're operating for how frequently we disinfect our floors or what processes our people are doing, but our selling in particular has changed completely because we're not out there interacting, you know, in our potential customers one-on-one like we were before. So what are we going to do with that? So again, this process, the business assessment, the cash flow analysis, the tactical action plan are all at no cost to you. Implementation then is the final step. So, you know, we want you to be able to take this back to your business and actually implement it on your site, you know, do well with it, provide the services and backup that you need to actually successfully see it to fruition. Are there any questions before I go on anything that I've covered so far?
There's nothing in the chat box at this time, so I would say if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and ask that at this point.
Okay. So if you think of something as we're going along and have a question, as Molly said, feel free to indicate it, and she'll give us a hands up. So once we have that all in place, we've done the assessment, we've done the cash flow analysis, we've worked with your team on putting together a short-term tactical action plan on, you know, what's the best impact we can see out of the next 30, 60, or 90 days or 6 months. What do we do with that? So implementation is the final step. We've planned it, now we're going to do it. After we do it, we're going to come back and check. We're going to say, okay, is this exactly what we needed? Are there other services that we can help? So we will adjust, or we will act on what comes next. Recommendations that come out of the tactical action plan might require more in-depth services. So for example, perhaps your company would like to enter a new market, someplace that you've never been before. You can take your core competencies and say, where else can we apply that? But even you really don't know where that might be. So market research or customer diversification services might require more in-depth assistance than what any of our programs can provide. If that's the case, and there's a cost associated with that, know that there is grant funding available. The IRC's board has allotted grant funding, mini grant funding of 33 to 50%, capped at $4,500, to assist with those projects that come out of the CRP program. Steel Valley Authority also has additional, they pay for the consulting services, they help offset the consulting cost for these more in-depth projects. Also, as I mentioned earlier, each one of the counties in our region received CARES Act funding, and each county is dealing with that independently. For Erie County specifically, and I know, Dave, that you are on this webinar, so to your benefit, and if there are any other Erie County companies, Erie County awarded the NWIRC $60,000 grant, for which we are applying that towards additional services for Erie County companies. So not only do you have this funding available, but you also have some of the Erie County CARES Act funding as well. So what does that look like? What does the assessment, the cash flow analysis, the tactical action plan look like? We're just going to take a quick look. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but I just wanted you to be aware when we sit down, it's very much like the Engage questionnaires that many of our partners do. They go out, used to be called the Business Calling Program. I think some companies knew it by that. They're going out, they're asking the company general questions about where is your business right now? Where does it stand? How was your supply chain disrupted? What are your top concerns? Where are your strengths and barriers? And then we even added some additional questions. So for example, on this slide at the bottom, one of the questions is, would you be interested in being part of a regional business-to-business supply chain database, even if there was a nominal fee? And we don't always know, if companies are interested in that. Perhaps they do business from outside the area. Perhaps they do business inside the region, but this database that they're talking about really hasn't been developed yet. But we know it's on the horizon. We know that it's being discussed in the industry partnerships. So while we're out talking to companies, we're adding questions that we think may be relevant to growing your business and be relevant to initiatives that are going on around the region. Now, I saw that there were a couple of questions or a couple of comments in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and go there. Michelle says, is this form available online? It is not available online, but Michelle, if you contact me, I'll be glad to send it out to you or talk to you about it, depending on the use. It's not a proprietary form. It's really just an assessment form. So if at the end of this presentation, you'll have access to all of the contact information for all of the partners that are involved in the program. And so if you just take that information down and contact me after, I'll be glad to share that with you. Okay, wait, I see one more. Oh. Okay. The cash flow analysis that is done by Steel Valley Authority is really is the in-depth cash flow analysis, and they're going to require for their program specifically your financials. They're going to look at your backlog. They're going to look at your current accounts receivable and accounts payable schedule. They're going to look at your debt load. And so their deep dive really is a deep dive, primarily because Steel Valley's program is a turnaround. It's a turnaround program. It's a layoff aversion program, and cash flow and how the company operates with its cash flow and where they might be able to offer turnaround services is really where their focus is. The Northwest IRC, and we have had companies in both, is really looking at simply where is your money coming in and where is your money going out over the next 6 months. We just want to see, are you aware of where your break even is? And if you are, have you talked to your suppliers? Have you talked to your customers? Have you talked to your bankers? It's really more of an awareness on the very high level cash flow analysis. And I will just ask Cindy to make a note and perhaps talk about where SBDCs, when we talk later in the session about what each one of the partners can offer, she can fill you in on what specifically SBDC does when they do a cash flow analysis. But this is really what we're looking at as part of the CRP program. It's really what are the critical issues. We're not really doing any facility tours right now, but if there was a walkthrough done, what are the observations? What are the interviews with the key employees? While we do the assessment, typically with one person, someone in the know at the business, normally it's the president or the operations manager, somebody that can answer the overall questions. The tactical action plan is actually done with the management team, because what we find is some of the team members, because they're coming from a different perspective or a different relevant point, that they are maybe not aware, or maybe they see things a little bit differently. I find this typically between engineering and sales. When it comes to many manufacturers, the key issues from one perspective isn't necessarily the same key issues from another perspective. That's the reason for bringing multiple team members together. Normally those are groups of about 4 to 6, depending on the company size. Again, really just asking them, what do you see as the business issue? What do you see as, we do a SWOT analysis, your strengths or weaknesses? What do we see as your opportunities and threats for the business going forward? And what do you see as the profile of your ideal customer? Then we say to you, so each one of you, give me your top 3. Give me your top 3 things that you would do tomorrow if you had the resources to help the company move forward. And then this whole document, the business assessment and the entire tactical action plan with the competitive market analysis, with all of the comments that were made during the meeting, and with the recommendations, is then provided to the company at the end in an out brief. And really, this is what the recommendations look like. We're listening to what you're saying. We're looking at the programs that are available and the services that can help your company, and then we're just making a recommendation based on that. So perhaps it's a list that you need just based on a NAICS code. I know we've done a couple of referrals to the SBDC about, see if you can provide this company with a list based on this NAICS code, North American Industry Classification Code. Here's the industry subsector. Can you provide this company with a list? And of course, their services are no cost as well. And so that is something that the company can start with as far as outreach. Maybe it's take that list and really develop an in-depth market research plan or an in-depth market analysis. And perhaps that requires expertise of a third-party consultant. And if there's a cost to that, we would get a proposal for you and we would say, here's the scope of work. We can combine the information that you've gotten from your free service with this information and really work with you one-on-one to develop a good market plan, a good strategy for, okay, how are we going to attack this? How are we going to break into this new market? And if there's a cost to that service, then the grant funding that comes either from the IRC or from the Steel Valley Authority or perhaps from the county can be combined with that to help go towards the cost of those services. So we're trying our very best to make it as affordable and as low cost for you as possible. Again, the services are either free, they're low cost, or they're at a cost, but we try to provide you with grant funding to help offset that cost. Are there any questions about that? Okay, so again, these are the 3 areas. These are some of the services that can be provided under any one of those areas. Any company, it's a self-assessment, so any company can actually look at where they're at right now and say, you know, we really feel like we would benefit from X service or X assistance. So each one of our agencies, while there's 4 core partners, are a little bit different. So I wanted just to go through, I'm gonna start with the IRC, and then we're gonna touch on Steel Valley, and then the SBDC. So the IRC is actually one, I said earlier, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. That's where the funding came down for this program. So we're one of 50 plus MEP centers across the United States. And each one operates a little bit differently, but each one's focus is specific on manufacturing. So we only work with manufacturers. This is our particular area. These are the logos at the bottom. So we're all under the Pennsylvania MEP, Manufacturing Extension Partnership. And then the Northwest IRC, along with all those agencies that are listed at the bottom, Catalyst Connection down in Pittsburgh area, probably for our companies is the one most would be familiar with, but all of these other IRC centers across the state. And then our service area is really broken out. Now I know Tom Weibel is on the phone. I know Lisa Postelik is on the phone or on the webinar today. I think Andy already had a meeting scheduled, but this is our territory and sort of how it's divided up. But again, it doesn't matter to us if you don't know your service provider or who you need to get in touch with. Don't worry about it. Just reach out to our center and we'll put you in touch with the right person. So what are some of the things that we can help you with? Well, we look at this as just being a big toolbox. You know, there's various tools in your toolbox. CRP is just one of those. We have other services that are available, whether it's employee development or business valuation or, you know, under technology, new product development, or on-site customized training or continuous improvement, business growth services, strategic planning, etc. It really, I mean, all these are services that we can provide to any company. CRP is just one of those in addition to the rest of these. And perhaps some of these will fit and perhaps they won't. Perhaps it's someone else's program that's really a better fit for you. It really just depends on where your company is right now. Steel Valley Authority, as I said earlier, is really focused on turnaround services. They've been in existence since, I believe, 1989. And they really are focused on 5 things: restructuring finances being first, streamlining operations, transition of ownership, finding new markets, or achieving a high performance workplace. And again, there's overlap there between what we do, what Steel Valley does, perhaps what Rapid Response does, maybe what the Career Link does, or Governor's Action Team, or SBDC. It really just depends on where the company is and what specific assistance they need on what program or service would best fit. So this is Steel Valley Authority's website. It's under steelvalley.org. This is the area that they cover. In our region, typically in Erie, it would be Deb Lutz out of the Erie office. And now to the SBDC. So Cindy's on the line, so I'm just going to let her take over from here and share with you information about the SBDC.
Great. Thanks, Susan. So yeah, just a quick overview about the Small Business Development Center. I'm in north central Pennsylvania. I guess I'm kind of talking about our services as well as Gannon University, but I'll kind of give you our map as well. But the Small Business Development Center, we're here to work with any kind of business at whatever stage of their life cycle. We're here to provide education through one-on-one business consulting services that we have. We're here to provide information through a number of different sources, local, regional, statewide, and national, as well as providing you access to tools. And ultimately, we're here to help you make better business decisions, helping you help businesses starting, helping businesses grow and thrive. So our one-on-one business consulting services are provided at no cost, and they're confidential. We have a number of business consultants who travel throughout our region, and I'll talk about our region here shortly. But our business consultants are here to provide those services most conveniently. Now, right now, we're working mostly virtually, but we have ventured out. We are meeting with clients face-to-face as clients are comfortable with that, because we're here to be as responsive as we can. The one-on-one business consulting services are provided in a way that, we're here to get to know your business. We're here to get to know what your needs are. We do that through our assessment process, through our interview process, and ultimately then we want to be that organization that ties you to expertise, again, information, tools, and resources. Sometimes it's us providing that assistance. Sometimes we bring in assistance within our SBDC network, and sometimes it means connecting with great resource partners like we have here with us today, between the county economic development programs, the regional economic development programs like SOAN and the IRCs. Our target audience, we work with prospective entrepreneurs, so we work with individuals looking to start a business. That's one area that I would say probably is not an overlap. We work with, we're helping to educate individuals on what it takes to start a business, what resources are available to you, what it takes to finance a business, and then ultimately helping them package up the documentation needed to seek the services that they need or seek the financing that they need. For us, our target audience is, again, any kind of business, a for-profit small business with less than 500 employees. And I have this kind of a scaled down version. Again, any life cycle of the business, whether you're looking to start, grow, mature, if you're if you're struggling, declining, or ultimately looking at maybe transitioning the business onto the next generation, we're here to plug in with our various assistants. Some of the examples of what I mean by the assistance and how we tap in to wherever you are in your life cycle. Pre-venture planning would be at an introductory stage. Business planning is something that typically is most common at startup, but certainly in growth and transition, it's also an important tool. Again, a kind of a sweet spot of what we do with our hands-on assistance. Susan mentioned cash flow. That kind of ties into our financial analysis assistance. And so when we're working with businesses where we're analyzing their financial statements, we certainly take a look at historicals. We'll spread them out. We'll do an analysis horizontally and vertically. We also utilize our databases to help analyze it based on the industry and certainly take into consideration their vision or plans for the next couple of years. And so, you know, a lot of different ways that we do financial analysis, whether it's an existing business, somebody looking to start a business, or somebody looking to sell a business. We have a QuickBooks Pro advisor on our staff with one of our consultants. And so we do a lot of training with QuickBooks. We do hands-on assistance with our QuickBooks Pro advisor. Really, the two areas that we see a lot of training needs focus in on marketing and accounting and financing. We also work with individuals in the area of marketing, search engine optimization, social media. We have marketing expertise on staff. The SBDC has a digital marketing center of excellence. So we tap into consultants across the state as it relates to digital marketing for our clients. We help with strategic planning, human resources. So if someone's looking to hire, fire, develop an employee handbooks, those types of things, we can help with that. We have environmental consultants across the state, a handful of them that tie into assisting clients one-on-one as it relates to maybe water quality, air quality, and energy efficiency. Well, business continuity, well, that's what we're doing right now, helping businesses respond to the pandemic, helping them as they look to pivot, respond, and recover. And then we also have assistance as it relates to doing business internationally and doing business with the government. And we typically, with those two areas, at least for our SBDC, we tap into partnering with our economic development partners in the region through North Central and through the Northwest Commission and the experts that are on staff there. Okay, you can go to the next slide. We also spend a lot of time with training. That's the other key area. And so we typically do probably to the tune of about 80 seminars a year. Again, every SBDC in Pennsylvania provides consulting and training. And so these are just some examples of the kind of training topics that we offer throughout the year. I would encourage you to get onto our mailing list, take a look at our statewide SBDC list of events. Ours are listed there, as well as all of the training events offered by the SBDCs. And right now, we've all pivoted to offering our training events online. Most of them are about an hour to an hour and a half right now. Most of them are free. And there's a lot of training that's being offered right now, more than probably ever. We have multiple centers of excellence that are developing training, as well as just the COVID response training. So we have training in hospitality, growth wheel, in agriculture, in restaurant management, and I'm forgetting some, digital marketing, e-commerce. And so there's a ton of training being offered. We highlight that every week in our weekly newsletter. So again, I would encourage you to get on our email distribution list to see what's going on. Our newsletter outlines what we have to offer, as well as events offered throughout the state and things being offered by our resource partners like the IRC and SOAN. And finally, this is our map. So similar to the maps shown before, We're one of 16 centers in Pennsylvania. We're all located at institutions of higher education. We all are responsible for certain counties, so depending on where you're located, depends on who you would reach out to. Again, our services are provided at no cost. We're funded through the institutions of higher education as their way of giving back to the communities in which they exist. So Clarion University does invest greatly into our program. We're also funded through the Small Business Administration and through the Department of Community and Economic Development on this state level. So a little bit about us. My staff is, we have 6 consultants here providing services. I know Gannon's about the same size as we are. And so we have consultants that are traveling throughout our designated territories, our designated counties. So Susan, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address them. And certainly one last thing, if you are interested in connecting with us, getting on our mailing list, all you have to do is send an email to sbdc@clarion.edu and we will get you on our list. Or we can connect with you to provide one-on-one assistance. So thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Cindy. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to the COVID recovery program. Again, those are the 3 questions. Those are a variety of the services that are available to all of you. Here are the contacts, and I can send out, or Molly will be sending out, a copy of this presentation to everyone that attended today. So the contacts for Department of Labor, for Steel Valley Authority, for the SBDCs, and for the Northwest IRC are all listed here. And we welcome you to contact, as I said a number of times, contact any of us. Don't worry about, you know, oh, I'm not sure. It seems like so many are doing the same type of thing. There are variations of that depending on where the company is, in their business operations, in their practices, in their size, in their location. So it really is just dependent on, specifically on you yourself. So do we have any questions about anything that we've covered today? We're just about 10 minutes ahead of schedule here.
There are no questions currently in the chat box, Susan. So again,
Okay.
I'll remind everyone, if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and pop that into the chat box.
I'll just share a little bit about what we're seeing out there. I'm gonna turn this back up to the contact page. But just as a note, some of what we're seeing out there, as I said when we first started, most manufacturers, and again, I'm going to speak specifically to manufacturing because that's the area that we operate in, but most manufacturers didn't shut down. The majority of them have been affected by the pandemic, and if not by like their customers, or they're getting materials like their supply chain issues upstream or downstream, then by their workforce. You know, people that are either afraid to come to work, having issues with children, you know, being out of school for so long, being homeschooled. You know, there's a lot of issues that are outside our norm right now when it comes to our workforce. And our HR folks, kudos to those of you that are in HR, because, you know, it's just a different world right now. It won't always be this way, but it is right now. So there are folks out there that work expertise in HR functions that may be able to provide assistance if that's something that you choose. We still hear is likely one of our #1 issues is we can't find qualified people. I know that we have folks on the line from the Career Link, which is one of our partners underneath Department of Labor, the Workforce Development Boards. Career Link, I know, has OJT, has adult dislocated worker youth programs that are available to every company. So when it comes to finding people, certainly that's one avenue that's available to you. There's There's not a lot of issues specific to COVID itself being presented in the companies. We have had a handful of companies that have had to shut down because they've had a positive indicator in their business. And so for a period of 14 days or whatever the case was until everything was disinfected, we do know of a number of companies that has occurred in. Normally what I'm hearing, particularly with automotive, because the big three were shut down, of course, is any manufacturer that was an automotive, they're still lagging behind recovery in that industry sector. Who knows, really? It is anyone's guess how long this is going to go. But what we are hearing is effects of supply chain instances beginning in fourth quarter of this year, and likely recovery of industries in the second and third quarter of next year. So this isn't anything that's going to go away anytime soon. And we're here to help however we can. There's as I say in like the video, there's a lot of great programs out there, and we're here to help however we can. That's all I had, Molly.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Susan. I think that's a lot of great information, and hopefully will help many of the manufacturers and other companies in our region. I want to thank everyone for jumping on. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll that we have. You know what? I just saw a question come in. So before I do that, we have a question that says, what are the benefits of participating in the program, even if business is good at the moment?
Well, if business is good at the moment, if the business has not been affected at all, then this probably isn't the right program. But keep in mind, all of the programs and services are available to you, even outside of COVID recovery. You know, the SBDC still has their services available. Northwest IRC still has their services available. CareerLink services are available. Governor's Action Team services are available. Ben Franklin still is in action. Like all these programs, there aren't any programs that I'm aware of that were developed specific to, okay, this is a COVID program and it's going to go away, you know, once COVID has passed. Most everything I know in fact, everything I know is based on the fact that all of these agencies are in place, have been in place, have programs and resources that are available to you now. So we tried to really approach COVID recovery from the point of view that if you're not affected at all, that's okay, because there's still a lot of services that are available to you, from market growth to, you know, process efficiencies is definitely one of the top we still get. I know the Northwest IRC does a lot of on-site facilitation of process improvement, whether through 5S or value stream mapping or setting up Kanban systems or kata or, you know, whatever that may be, or leadership trainings, etc. You know, all of those aren't dependent on issues associated with the pandemic. Those are there for every company. So that certainly would be a benefit. Did that answer your question?
I think it did. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now, don't see any other questions, but if you have any come up, please feel free to still use that chat box. I just launched the survey, and again, it's just a few questions. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to answer that, we greatly appreciate your feedback. And in the meantime, I'll again say, go ahead and ask any final questions in the chat box. The video recording will be shared in a few days, as well as these contacts will be as part of that email we'll share with you. And I'd just like to thank everyone again for being on, and encourage you to visit our website, nwirc.org, to see what other webinars and trainings that we have coming up. And if you need any information, please feel free to reach out to us. And as Susan said, you know, reach out to any one of these organizations and we can help you find, you know, who's appropriate to help you.